So welcome to the 1990 series. My name is Amanda O'Shea from the Serendipity Experience, and I have with me Mr. Ian Watson from Hampstead. How are you doing, Ian?
My pleasure to be here. Thank you, Amanda. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see. I was delighted to see that light and that sun that is streaming behind you, and I was very impressed of your view over Hampstead Ponds.
I know, don't tell anybody that.
We'll keep it a secret, shall we?
Exactly, it's my secret little corner of London that doesn't feel like London.
Absolutely amazing, and it's beautiful here today as well. So it's great here. The sunshine seems to make us all smile, even though we know that that's not. Even the weather, even the sunshine doesn't have that power, right?
No, we just have a preference for it.
Exactly. You know, when I first moved to Spain, Ian, I really believed that it was the sun that made me happy. That was my story for years.
Wow.
And then I realized there were a lot of Spanish people who were under the title of depressed or on antidepressants, or
right.
And it
even,
was like,
even though they're living in a sunny climate the whole time, yeah.
So it's not even the sun, right?
Can't be just that, right?
Can't be just that. And it is true. We do have that preference. And and I love that. So thank you for being part of this series. It is about giving thanks to everybody that's been a part of my journey through my whole life, but more especially in those last kind of 7 years since I've come across what we call the principles. And you played a big part in that, whether you know that or not.
I don't really know that, no.
And you were and that's the thing, right? You're just doing what you're doing. I think the first time I was ever in the same room with you was when we were in Dublin in the Bernie Gillespie brought over Dicken Bettinger.
Oh wow, really?
Do you remember that in Dublin?
I don't think I was there.
What? I'm sure you were there. Dicken Bettinger and Coisy, and we were in this groovy. Maybe you weren't there. Maybe we just talked about you there.
I have the feeling I missed that one. I think I wanted to be there, but
you weren't in Dublin.
I don't think I was there at that particular one.
But that is where, see, Bernie was the first person that actually I had my first ever call with. Maybe you weren't there then. Maybe you weren't there. But that's the time that your name came up a lot. Your name came up a lot. And because Bernie was the person who had kind of introduced me. And then I did some training with Jack Prancy, blah, blah. And then I ended up with Dicken Bettinger in this training, this 3-day training. And a lot of people there, maybe that's I've got it wrong, but a lot of people there had been training with you.
Yeah.
And that was there were a lot of homeopaths in the room.
Yes.
And that was the thing. So maybe I've got that. Oh, it felt like you were there. It was amazing.
I was wishing I was there, I think.
It was amazing. And that was the first time that I'd heard the Ian Watson name. And then I had done whatever there was a talk or would have been maybe a webinar or something that I listened to. But when I first started sharing, your things that I'd heard you speak, was that first year at Viva where you did the opening talk, and it was amazing. I loved it. I think it was 2015, I guess then. Yeah. And I have shared that ever since with most of my clients.
Wow.
Yeah, and shared that around, as being this talk that just really, really touched me. And so I thank you. I thank you for showing up to these kind of chats and showing up to events and being part of that community that's sharing this amazing understanding.
Oh, thanks for saying that, and thanks to you as well for doing what you're doing as part of this community. And I love the fact that it does feel like a community of friends, doesn't it?
It does.
We're all working together with the similar aims and aspirations and helping each other, which is great.
Yeah. So it is always, we always look for connection, don't we? And I remember sort of anytime we meet people, without realizing it or not, that we kind of want to know, oh, where are you from, or where do you live, and we like that connection. Yeah. I remember you used to live in Queen's Park. Like, oh, I'm from Maida Vale. It's like, we're always looking to kind of like see, have our paths crossed before, or see, do we know people in common? Or
Yeah,
we do that continuously, you know. So for me, you had that Regent's Park, St John's Wood sort of Queen's Park connection, and it's funny how I see in myself gravitating in a conversation when I meet something new. I'm looking for, have we got anything in common? We're looking for the connection, you know.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? I hadn't really thought of it in that way before, but I suppose it's an echo of the fact that we do know somewhere that we are all the same. You know?
Yeah, we're connected. We're you know, and I think if any of us had a long enough chat with anybody, we'd work out that there was that. What do they call it? Is it the 6 degrees of separation?
Yes, yeah, we'd find common ground somewhere.
Yeah, 6 or 7, something like that. But we're looking for common ground, right? That's, you know, we're always looking for that because we know that it's there.
Exactly, yeah.
Whether it comes up with, oh, my son went to that school, or oh, my son went to that university, or oh yeah, you know, it used to be a joke when you know, when working in America, that people were all like, oh, you're from Ireland, or you're from England, oh, do you know John, or do you know Paddy, or you know, like some long lost relative. The Americans used to love finding that Irish connection.
Yeah.
You know, when I worked on cruise ships, having those conversations with people who loved the connection that they had something with England or Ireland or Europe.
I suppose particularly for people who've felt that they've been somewhat uprooted, you know, that their roots are somewhere else, I think it becomes even more relevant, doesn't it?
Yeah. So going back, that whole thing of connection and well-being, and I know that you've been, I mean, I'm not so sure exactly what you're up to these days, but maybe you'll let us know what you're up to. And I know that you've got something, we're going to have a little conversation about sort of seeing ourselves as mentally healthier, and how the understanding of what we call the principles can really help to you know, for us to realize our own well-being and our own resilience.
Yeah, that's been a long time that it's been a topic of interest for me, and it's become something that is, if you like, it's more in my field of vision now, partly because there's such a big conversation happening around mental health. You know, you can't open a newspaper or listen to the news or watch the media without seeing, including a lot of high-profile figures, you know, people like Prince Harry and Russell Brand and Ruby Wax and Stephen Fry, you know, sharing their experience of how they've struggled with certain psychological and emotional challenges, and maybe some things that they found to be helpful. So there's this mental health conversation which we're kind of collectively having now, which has been, you know, catching my attention, as it has a lot of people. But what intrigues me about it partly is the fact that if you ask people what do they mean by mental health, they struggle to even talk about that. That's what I've noticed.
Right. Yeah, it's such a buzzword, right? I mean,
it's a buzzword, but if you actually pin them down and say, what does that mean to you? What they generally start talking to me about is, well, I struggled with anxiety or depression or suicidal thoughts or self-harm, or my daughter's got an eating disorder. And all of that is under the category of mental health now, which is somewhat ironic because that's not what mental health really is about. What people are describing is mental and emotional suffering and struggle. I even did it just as a preliminary to an article that I'm writing on this. I did a quick Google search a few days ago. I just put the term in mental health to see what's the top things that come up. And all of the sites are to do with mental and emotional problems and the kind of services that are offered.
Yeah.
So what I got was a page full of things like alcohol addiction and eating disorder and self-harm and suicide, all under the heading of mental health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I thought, there isn't anything on this page that tells me anything about mental health. It tells me a lot about what people are struggling with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, isn't that interesting?
It is so interesting. I think that's what Bill Pettit, as a psychiatrist, said in his years of training. He did 800 hours on diagnosis and, you know, and medication to treat diagnosis. and never did an hour on
Yeah.
mental health.
Yeah.
And yet he was called a mental health practitioner.
Right, that's the irony. So my point there being that if we really want to help, offer something that's helpful in terms of moving people in the direction of becoming mentally healthier, which is what I'm interested in, that conversation needs to be oriented in that direction, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we keep our focus entirely on what we think is wrong with ourselves and other people, we're going to see more of that. That's the only thing that we get to think about and talk about. But it is a little bit more elusive to talk about mental health. In a sense, it's a little bit like physical health in this respect. When you're completely physically healthy and pain-free, you don't notice it.
No, you don't talk about it all day, about how great our knees are. My knees are really great right now, you know? Or
Exactly.
my hips are feeling just perfect right now. They're fully moving. We don't talk about how happy we are right now, unless we're super, super happy. But yeah, we don't go out and have a great time walking around Hampstead Pond and come back and talk about, do we think that was so great because my mum and dad are still, you know, happy and together, and we don't talk like that.
I mean, we might occasionally, but you're right. It's not given anything like the same emphasis. So it's when we're struggling and we're suffering that seems to preoccupy our attention, our mind. Then we give a lot of oxygen to that, and it starts to dominate our experience. Whereas when we're doing well, we tend to just get on with our life, right? We just, we enjoy life, and we enjoy our family and our friends and our work and so on and so forth. So what I was starting to reflect on was, well, how can we tell if someone's actually getting mentally healthier? That strikes me as something that would be good for people to know.
Yeah.
Are there some recognizable indicators that could be applicable across the board? So it's not just, this individual person, but are there some recognizable signs that we could use as almost like a bit of a yardstick and say, well, in terms of a general direction, am I, or is this person moving in the direction of becoming mentally healthier or not? To me, it's an open question. I'm not saying I've got the definitive answer to this question. I'm kind of fumbling my way, and I feel like I'm in a bit in the dark most of the time. But I'm fumbling my way to try and articulate that, and this is new for me, which is why I wanted to bring this into this conversation.
Yeah, because
you can help me with this.
It is so true, isn't it? You know that I work at the addiction centre and the recovery centre, and so there is something about that is very obvious to me when I see people in the morning, or that sort of their behavior tells me where they're at in that moment. Their behavior tells me where how mentally healthy they are in that moment.
Yeah.
When I meet somebody and they are bright and breezy and morning and how are you? Not many people ask me how I am, right? Because the first thing is, oh well, what else is wrong, or what so I see that I get the great thing about residential care, if you like, for whether that's for anxiety or depression, or because somebody's got a substance sort of abuse, is that you get to see this shift happening day by day.
Yeah.
So somebody might come in and it's talking about them and their problems, and the first thing in the morning is to tell you how bad they slept, or this or that, and suddenly something happens, and they're like, morning, how are you?
So that's a good one. So I think already you've highlighted what I would consider to be one of the signs there would be, let's call it less self-absorbed or self-concerned.
Yeah.
Less concerned with self, with me and my problems. And when we're less concerned with self, we've got more space to be interested in others, or what's going on elsewhere. Yeah.
It's incredible, Ian, because I've always had this sort of thing that actually the biggest addiction we've got is to self.
Yeah.
It's like, and then from that we've reached out for something.
Yeah.
But if we can look at the addiction to self, that I talk a lot about, or in, I don't know, in the recovery world, but for example, if you had some sort of a drinking issue, they would talk about alcoholism. So we can take away the alcohol. That's what we do when you come into a treatment centre. But you're still left with the ism, and that's the I, the self, and the me.
Mm.
You know, the isms, if we don't look at the ism, we're going to get caught up again in really being a victim to circumstances, situations, events, and other people's views, opinions, and behaviors.
Mm.
So I think it's super helpful when we start to look at the nature of the principles, when we look at the essence of this understanding, which is pointing us back to, wow, we're all one energy, just has got this gift and chance, like you say, to dance and play around inside a physical human body. And without understanding how that works, we kind of muck up a lot.
Well, that's true. So yeah, I think that's exactly right. And there's maybe if we can do it this way around, Amanda, if this works, there's a few other kind of pointers that having reflected on it, that I've come to see are, I would say, fairly reliable.
Oh, I'd love to hear it, please. I'd love to hear what you think.
Then we can maybe conclude it by saying, like, how is it that this understanding that we share can be so helpful in this regard, in actually helping people to move in this direction. So we can sort of piece the two things together.
Yeah.
So what you've just highlighted is definitely one of the things I've noticed is, becoming less self-absorbed, less ego-centric, if you like, in some way. And I just want to preface this by saying, I'm not saying here that this is anything that we should be doing.
It's what we all do.
There's nothing good or bad about any of this. I'm simply trying to make some observations about what I've noticed, and I think which are observable by anybody, really, if we pay attention. Another thing that I've noticed is that people become more present as we get healthier. And what I mean by that is less concerned with past and future. So it's an interesting thing when we spend less time thinking about the past, i.e. remembering, things that are no longer happening, but we might still be getting bothered by them because we're recycling them in our own mind. We spend less time doing that, and we spend less time worrying about an imaginary future that's, again, is not really happening in real time. We're automatically more present.
Yeah.
There's more of us available to be actually in life, in real time, engaged. How are you, Amanda? Actually to be to be present to life in whatever way it's showing up. So that, I think, is also an indicator that someone is becoming more mentally healthy. I've also seen that people become more compassionate towards themselves and others. There's a kind of increased acceptance, self-acceptance, and also acceptance of the differences between us. The fact that we all have different thoughts, feelings, behaviors, backgrounds, etc., etc., becomes less of an issue for us. We get less bothered by the fact that there are surface differences. And I think that also we become less, as a consequence, a bit less judgmental.
Yeah.
And therefore less reactive. And if you look at what we get bothered by, all of us, we get bothered by the differences, that it starts to matter to us that people do things differently the way that we do them, or, the way that we wish they did them, or it creates expectations, and that creates conflicts and relationships and so on and so on. All of that starts to diminish and fall away. The person starts to get more present and more accepting of themselves as they are.
Yeah.
That to me is a person who's becoming mentally healthier.
And it is, it's so true, Ian. What I see, one of the biggest things I see is the seriousness stops.
Right. So, I've got that under the heading lighthearted. They become more lighthearted. Exactly.
And that's exactly, suddenly, and they're taking, they're in the banter, they're taking the mick out of themselves. They're, there's something about, it seems to, for me anyway, I see that a lot of the industry, if you like, takes it very seriously, this mental health and mental illness. But actually, when we show up with more lightness and more presence and more of an understanding, we can be light around people who are feeling the darkness, and suddenly it just seems to be like the best love virus in town, where the lightness spreads, right? And that for me is a big indicator when you hear people laughing again that have just told me they haven't laughed in years.
Exactly. So that, I love that. Yeah. And exactly, that's part of what I've seen as well. People, they start to take themselves less seriously, but also life generally, becomes more playful. There's
Yeah.
a lighter relationship to life,
Yeah.
less serious, less heavy. And particularly you see that for people who've been, if they've been burdened by some sense of responsibility or guilt, or, feeling that something's really been weighing them down. That starts to fall away. That lightness just naturally emerges, doesn't it? It's not anything that we need to manufacture or work on. It
but you bring that to the room, Ian. You bring that. Like, when that's what I see in you. I see that lightness and that joy, and your way to work or to talk with humor. And doesn't mean you don't take things seriously, but you work in a way that's light, and that's beautiful to be around that.
Yeah, it is nice to be around, and it doesn't mean that you're superficial all the time either. You can have light and depth together.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned.
Yeah.
So I think that's a key part. Another thing that I've seen as a person becomes healthier is they learn to listen more to their own wisdom. That they become more autonomous in that respect. They become less concerned with other people's opinions and comparing themselves to what other people are doing, and more willing to just listening to what's right for me and really trusting that. See people start to live more from their own center, and they're less kind of pulled in every direction. You can tell when people get lost because they're often looking in every direction. And it's driven by a feeling of insecurity that I don't know the answers. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. And of course you get very confused because there's a lot of people who will tell you what to do, right?
And that's so true, because we've been taught to give advice. A lot of people, they think that that's the job, rather than pointing people back to their own wisdom. But it's so much more attractive, isn't it, when somebody is not looking for validation, or when somebody just can make a decision, when you can hand something over. Let's talk about the workplace. That somebody will make a decision, be it right or wrong at the end of the day, but in the moment that you trust them, that they've got enough connection to wisdom or common sense. And
that's it. Yeah.
It's easier for managers to hand that over to somebody else, sort of, and be able to go away and do their jobs.
Yeah.
Not worrying, oh gosh, so this plays out everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And trust is another one that you mentioned that word. I think trust in oneself, trust in life is also, I think, is a feature of someone who's becoming more healthy mentally and emotionally, is that we naturally start to trust life more because we discover that life is trustworthy. Right?
It's when you realize, I do think that, yes, you're so right. When we realize that life is on our side, life's got our back, it's our best life insurance policy, that the universe can take care of stuff. We don't live in fear so much, do we? We go for it, right? We take a chance.
Yeah, and a lot of that insecurity and worrisome thinking, and also that over-analysis that we can do. If we don't trust life, we think we have to figure everything out. We've got to know all the answers before we do anything, It's very paralyzing for people. It's very draining. Yeah. Whereas if you have that trust, you're more willing to take a leap of faith when it's required, which it often is, because we don't know, what this decision is going to lead to, or et cetera, et cetera.
And that brings excitement in somebody. So even if it's somebody like, oh, I've gone for that job, or I've asked that girl out on a date, or this sort of stuff that happens, that they, that you might see people. It's the little things. It's not always the big things, is it? It's the smaller things that have more positive sort of, I don't know, life-changing effect.
Yeah, and I think that kind of joie de vivre spirit that starts to emerge, again, it's in all of us, and it spontaneously just arises, doesn't it? And I think it can also take the form of appreciation, just appreciation and enjoyment, as you say, of the little things. Yeah. You find more contentment with less as you get healthier as well. So we become less needy. Yeah. We don't need stuff. We let go. We start to, the idea that we need stuff in order to feel okay starts to fall away. We start to see that we're already okay.
So there there are a lot of telltale signs when
Aren't
people
there?
are mentally healthy. You just said something there about having more thanks and gratitude, and I see that as people in the treatment centres, people start to I don't know, self-discover maybe who they are at their true essence, or they get further along the line of being in early stages of recovery. They start helping out. They start clearing. It just happens. It's a
Oh,
really
this is beautiful.
sign of
Yeah,
recovery that
this is.
suddenly, yeah, instead of running off from the table, actually they're kind of like, oh, I'll take the plate, or would you like a cup of tea? You know, so when they first come in, they're surrounded with love and care, and it's like, let us help you. You've not got to worry about anything else now. Just get quiet. You're safe now. Everything's okay. And suddenly, the day when they sort of say, "What can I help you? Can
How
I?"
can I give back? Oh, I love that, Amanda, that you've mentioned that. That hadn't occurred to me, but it's spot on. Is that there's a natural impulse towards service that,
Insert.
that arises as we get healthier ourselves. Isn't that? That's so true. And
Mm.
again, it's recognizable. We've all seen examples of that, and I've seen many. Um, I love that you mentioned that. Thank you.
And do you know that's really highlighted, Ian, in the 12-step program, because step 12 is giving back in service.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, the beautiful that it was designed to point people to have a spiritual awakening, if you like. In the 12th step is that giving back in service. That's why people go back and host their meetings. I mean, I see some of it, comes from a bit of a fear model. I see that we come more from a health model, but I see the beautiful, I think that 12-step program is a beautiful program, and it's pointing people to sort of get over themselves, let go, forgive what they've done, make their amends, keep a check on themselves, check in. But the 12th step is to be of service and be happy and wholesome and free.
Mm.
And so
I like that it's the 12th step as well. It's like having learned how to take care of yourself in a healthier way, and to understand something about your own nature, then you're in a position to be able to be of service. Not before then. If we try and get in the service mode too soon, then we end up giving in a way which is self-sacrificing, becoming a bit of a martyr. That's not helpful.
No, back to victim consciousness, really.
Right.
Back to, and when I first was introduced to this, all I wanted to do was, I wish my family could hear this. I wish the father of my children, wish he could hear this. Yeah. And the only person that needed to hear it was me.
Well, that's it. That's all of us, and that's the right way around, isn't it? We see it for ourselves first, and we've genuinely got something that just wants to be shared. It's not even a pressure on us at all. A couple of other things I've seen. One is that we get more resilient. So it's not that we don't have setbacks and upsets and disappointment. Life still throws its stuff at us, right? Mm-hmm. And we can lose sight of what we've known, and get lost again in the world of thought and feeling. But I think as we get healthier, our capacity to bounce back also increases, becomes more available to us. We recover sooner, is what I've seen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The recovery period seems to get shorter. And even it starts to happen that some things that might have sent us in, for a loop, they just don't bother us anymore. We become less bothered.
Yeah.
Things that seem to be bothersome.
I was talking yesterday in a group about getting your knickers in a twist, but we had a guy from Saudi Arabia, and then I was trying to explain the saying of getting your knickers in a twist. So but that is what we mean, right? We get a kerfuffle. I just like what you said, going through a loop. Is that what you said?
Something like that, yeah.
That would have been easier for me to have said that yesterday.
Lost in translation.
Getting your knickers in a twist. And then I found myself saying, like when you put two legs in one. No, it's all just wrong. Forget it. Anyway, at least I didn't give a demonstration. Hey,
yeah. When you're in
that's what you mean, isn't it, Ian?
Yes.
You mean when we get our knickers in a twist, as we would say.
Yeah, which is still going to happen from time to time, but I think that our capacity to bounce back, get over ourselves quicker, starts to increase as we understand more about our own experience. And the other thing that I've seen is there's an increased, I touched on this before about compassion, but there's an increased ease with a range of emotional experience. We become less selective about what we let ourselves feel.
Yeah.
That to me is a really key ingredient of someone getting mentally and emotionally healthier, is that we become less selective. So we're more okay with feeling sad, being afraid, getting upset. It's okay. We're okay with the fact that that happens. We start to recognize that that's just part of the human condition, and it's not anything that we need to fear. There aren't certain emotions that are taboo, that we're not supposed to be feeling. That idea starts to fall away, and there's a real freedom in that is really lovely to see. When you see that unfolding for people who've been using a lot of energy to try not to feel certain thing, and then they're just not doing that anymore. It's very freeing.
It is, and you hear it in their talk. So suddenly you hear somebody just say, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Or it is what it isn't. And somebody that would have been more sort of up in arms or more dramatic, I see less drama. That's what I see when I've got this saying, less drama, more karma. But I see that, especially working anything with the world of, I suppose, especially working with addiction, I see a lot of drama. It's very dramatic, and the drama in people's lives and stories tends to soften.
Nice.
And that's very, that's very apparent to me. People coming down with, "You'll never guess what happened to me. Oh, you won't believe this." I go, well, I will. I will, but it's so dramatic, some of our lives, or some of the periods of our lives, right? Yeah. I see that I got in my own way. I see that I made it too dramatic when I'd been a victim to other people's maybe addictions or other people's circumstances. Innocently, I became quite dramatic in certain times of my lives that just wouldn't make sense for me to I don't know, to wallow in that now, or to dramatize something.
Yeah. So, those are some of the things out there. I mean, I think if we spent more time on it, we'd probably find other nuances.
That's I'm sure that's been so helpful to somebody listening to this who says, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not to say that, anybody should be feeling or experiencing any of these particular things. For me, it's just something to notice. If you notice any of these have become more evident, that's a good sign. and it's a direction, it's not a destination.
Yeah.
Because there's any of these that we've talked about, becoming more present, becoming more resilient, more compassion, more awareness, less self, all of these, as far as I can tell, they're open there for infinite depth of experience. None of them has a finite endpoint.
Yeah.
There's no limit to how lighthearted we can become, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Right? So I think just getting a taste of one of these is great. Yeah. And I think that it gives you a sense of what's possible, but there's more available in that direction. Keep moving in that direction, you'll experience more. That's also what I want to emphasize. That's why to me, the only way I can really accurately talk about this is a direction of becoming mentally healthier, as opposed to this is mental illness, this is mental health. They're not like two separate categories. It's a continuum.
Yeah.
But what we can start to see is, are we moving in a healthier direction or not? And I think that to me is a conversation worth having.
And it is mentally healthier for you, right? Just because, if people have written books on this kind of stuff and it's like, well, this is what you need to do to be mentally healthy. That I don't see the truth in that as much as I see it in what serves you well. Where do you feel more lighthearted? Where do you feel more lighthearted? Well, do more of that.
Exactly.
Do more of that.
Exactly. It goes back to the following your own wisdom piece. Yeah.
What suits you? It's about what suits us, right?
Yeah. Very individual.
Yeah. A boss. My boss used to say that it just doesn't suit me. Well, you know what? Then don't do it. If something doesn't suit you, find something that does suit you.
Yeah. Yeah. We have that capacity to listen in and notice what does and what doesn't. So that will be also one of the indicators of becoming healthy, right? We pay more attention to that.
Yeah.
What resonates for me, what doesn't, and being willing to let the things go that don't.
Yeah.
So then the last piece of this, Amanda, would be, well, what is it that we can reliably say will help anybody, not just certain people, but anybody, to move in this, what I'm calling this direction of becoming mentally healthier. That's what I'm interested in. Is I'm not interested in a tool that might work for person A, but it's no good for person B. I'm interested in, is there something that has the potential to help any human being who's interested in moving in this direction? And you and I both know that there is something that's in that category.
Yeah.
And I think it just boils down to a couple of really simple things, which is all that's really required is for any person to realize, and that's the key word, not to intellectualize, but to realize through their own insight, like to actually come to see for themselves in their own way, something about the fact that they have innate well-being already.
Yeah.
That to me would be point number one, that they're already okay on the inside. So that to me is the first essential key ingredient that will start this movement in this direction. Is a person, we have to start from the right place.
Yeah.
And for me, the right place to start from is the recognition that you already have, everybody already has mental and emotional health or well-being, whatever term you want to use, that's already intact. That's not something that needs to be worked on, developed, or anything like that. It's already there, it's already available. And that has to be coupled with an understanding as to why it doesn't look and feel like that. Because it doesn't, right?
Yeah, it seems like something gets in the way of that.
Well, it seems like it comes and goes. It seems like we lose it, sometimes temporarily, sometimes for really long periods of time. So there also has to be a second piece to the realization, which helps us to see, again, insightfully, why it is that our well-being seems to come and go. Why does it seem that some people have got more and some people have got less? Why does it look like I had it until this happened and then I lost it?
Yeah.
And that has to do with what we call the role of thought, the power of thought. The role that thought plays in creating our experience, and particularly our felt experience. The recognition that we're living in the felt experience of our own thinking in the moment. So that the degree to which a person starts to see and understand that is the degree to which they relax around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not so worried about the fluctuations of how am I feeling today. It becomes more like the weather, it's changeable. I can accept that it's changeable because that's just how it's made.
Yeah.
That's the nature of it. But I know that I'm okay underneath that.
And it's like knowing the sun's always there, right? It's about, we use that a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
But it's so great, the weather metaphor, that we are we are the sun in our true essence, and then there's clouds that pass through, which are thoughts that take us away from that. And it's not that, it's quite simple, it's not.
To me, that's it. It's those two essential facts really is all that we need to see. And again, there's no end to the depth to which we can realize that. But even just getting a little glimpse or a little sense of one or the other is enough.
And it is really like, as you were saying that, what jumped into my head, it's like playing Ludo or Frustration, or one of those games where you need a 6 to start.
Right.
Like throwing a dice.
Yeah.
Right? You get both of those things, like double 6. Right?
Yes.
Off and running.
Exactly. You're halfway around the board already.
Yeah. And then that just came into my head. When those games, you have to press the dice is in it. I think, is it Ludo or Frustration or one of those? And it is like getting a 6 on your first throw.
That's it.
And it might be the second throw. You might need to have to, and what I see we do, Ian, is we're just sowing seeds to point people in that direction.
That's it.
So they might not have the 6, but we'll give them the 4 and the 2.
And at a certain point, they're going to piece it together and throw a 6. Yeah, we don't know when that point will be, but we know, you and I both know, that we can really trust this now, that if we're patient and the person's willing to be patient with themselves, anybody can come to have some kind of a realization about these facts that we've just talked about, the fact of innate well-being and the fact that we're living in a thought-created experience, which doesn't look like a thought-created experience. Anyone can start to get a glimpse that that's true in their own experience. And we know for a fact that as and when they do, they're automatically going to start moving in the direction of mental health that we've just talked about.
Yeah.
It's a given.
I think you and I should create a board game.
I think you might be onto something there.
Mentally healthier. And the dice should have these, we better not tell anyone, we better not give our secrets away anymore.
You just did, Amanda.
So Mr. Ian Watson, the man with the hat, and with this wealth of wisdom that just seems to whisper from you. You know, I think you're amazing, Ian. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. It's so lovely to talk to you. And
Yeah.
I hope this has been an interesting and helpful topic for people, because as I say, it's interesting to me. So, and I think that people are genuinely interested in becoming, in having happier and easier lives.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're looking for?
I think so, and I've learned a lot from this. And if you and I have both seen something, then the chances are that somebody else is going to hear something too.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
Ian, thank you for your time and for everything that you do and your cheery disposition. And I look forward to our paths crossing soon. It was lovely to hang out with you for a few days in Spain recently. We
I
had
know.
lots of fun.
This is a treat, isn't it? Twice in 2 weeks.
I know, yeah, it is. So let's do more of this stuff. Lots of love to you, Ian.
Thank you,
Bye,
Amanda.
everybody. Bye, Ian. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.